Okay, let's talk about Flux today because I know there's a lot of people who are interested in Flux, and I've talked about it, but I've actually not been making it. Even though most of even the videos that I do on this channel, like the latest one I did, Cyberpunk City in Ganymede, on Ganymede, that was done with Flux, and this is what creates that whole really polished, somewhat realistic look. So basically the workflow for Flux is almost the same as any other workflow that we've done already, such as the one on just regular Stable Diffusion, Excel, and whatnot. The only real difference is actually not on this side of the model. It's the other stuff, how you build it. So I use unit, double click and type unit, gguf. You use this, and you have your, VAE, load your VAE, and then we load in the clip. But we're going to use a dual clip loader, gguf again. This is a unit gguf thing, Flux version, I guess. There's a different one of this too where you don't have to use it this way, but I'm just gonna focus on this one because I think this is the most common one that people do, even though I don't use it this way all the time. And then for the dual clip, I use you have to use two. I use clip L, and this one is a text encoder, T5XXL FP8, because this is Q8 Flux 1 Q8, which means like quantized, which is basically like a not as high definition version of it, I guess you could say. It's easier for the computer to deal with it. So if you remember from building the other models, if you just go back and let's say checkpoint loader, you'll see that the model, clip, and VAE are built in. So on Stable Diffusion, it's all in one node. But on Flux, it's basically been split into 3 different ones. But it functions the same way as far as like connecting them. So that's really the biggest difference between these two. And one other thing. Because of the way that Flux is built, there is no real negative prompt, at least not in developer mode. I think in the commercial or professional mode, which I do not believe is available for local use, for that version you might have negative prompting available. I don't know. But I only use the stuff locally, so in this version there isn't. And the reason why it isn't because I'm just gonna keep building while I talk. The reason why it isn't is because technically the developer version, Flux 1D, is actually a distilled model. And a distilled model is basically a model that's a simpler version. It's a distilled guidance model of the bigger model, which is the professional one. And it tends to, or at least the goal of it, is to make whatever the parent model, which was based off of, is trying to emulate that. And by doing so, it's more efficient in how it does the pass-throughs, because when you do negation and positive and all this kind of stuff, you have more pass-throughs, more things that it needs to process. And if it just goes by what the parent model goes, it kind of skips over those steps or whatever. So that's basically kind of what it's doing. So as a result of it not being a negative model, you could do this thing right here. You could do this, right? Which you still actually have some missing things. Or I'll do it the other way around because what I'm trying to explain here. So you could do this thing where you could go clip text encode, right? And you could do this actually if you wanted to. You make them the same one and connect it to this, model connects to model, blah blah blah. You could do it like this, but you wouldn't, this CFG would not affect anything on the other side. So usually what happens is people keep this at 1. This particular model, the Flux model, doesn't require a lot of steps, even though you can push up steps. It's going to take more processing. But the problem is with this, connecting it like this, you're not going to have any guidance because the CFG is kind of irrelevant. I'm going to put this to it I believe anything below 1024. I might be thinking of SDXL, but I believe you should at least have 1024 by 1024 when you're dealing with Flux. But as I was saying, you need some type of guidance here. So you could do it this way, where you take this and, well, actually, you do Flux guidance, and then you add in your guidance through here and then through here. The negative doesn't really matter, it just still needs to be connected in some way. You could do it this way, but you'd be missing out on something else that has to do with the dual clip loader. So I don't recommend that you do it this way at all, because they have a special Flux clip text encode Flux. This one has the guidance built into it. Plus, as you'll see, the T5XXL is down here, as you'll see this window. And, well, let's make sure this is in Flux mode. And the clip L is at the top. Now, understanding what that really is a bit of a difficult to explain. So maybe I didn't explain this before that well. The text encoders are basically what's, in your prompt, right? You have text. You type in stuff and it interprets that text. The clip L, it stands for contrastive language image pre-training. And I don't know I don't know exactly what the L stands for, but basically it interprets how you have text that's related to an image or whatever, like how it's been marked up and how that relates to what you're saying. And the second one, this is the power of Flux over something like Stable Diffusion, which is why it doesn't have two dual clip loaders at the same time, is that the second one, this T5XXL, is for large language models. So it basically interprets speech a lot better. So when you explain stuff, right, it can grasp it. And this is going to really play into how the prompts are different in Stable Diffusion versus Flux. So for the most part, you can just type all your information here at the bottom, which is where that large language model thing is, and you're going to be okay with just that. But a lot of times, even what I do is I will type it here and then copy and paste it in here too. So it's like going through both. I don't know how much of a difference it really makes, but it does make a difference. But you could just say that because you added more input, and a difference in input is going to have significance. So at any rate, that's what they are about. That's what they're for. And again, one is specifically built on the idea of model training, and the other one is a large language model, which is literally how you speak and how you talk to the thing. So this is basically the entire workflow for just the Flux model, and everything should run. We'll do the whole thing where we run it without giving it any prompt and see what happens, just for to figure out what it's going to spit out. I don't think it's going to do exactly the same thing as the Stable Diffusion one, where it's like a underpainting or something like that, but we'll see. Flux is the same type of thing in a different manner. Holy crap, what is that? I don't even know what that is, but it's very interesting. So unlike Stable Diffusion, where it gives you this kind of weird looking underpainting blob, this gives you this strange imagery. And it's probably because, again, it's based on a distilled model. It might act differently if this is the professional version. I don't know. But there you go. As you can see, it runs without even having the prompt. So let's get to it. Let's start really getting into what makes Flux different. All right, let me expand this out really quick. Okay, so we'll do our standard thing. A parrot wearing a birthday hat. Yeah? Okay, let's just go with that. Also, another thing, that it being a distilled model, it allows it to run faster than if it wasn't, because of the less things it has to interpret. So That's a kind of an upside to it. So we have a parrot wearing a hat, a birthday hat. And as you can see, Flux is kind of by default wanting to do things kind of like more realistic. And that's not always the case, but there's reasons why it starts to change. I'm gonna bring this over closer. That way I don't have to keep changing the window space so much. So one of the major differences in prompting from Flux and Stable Diffusion, and this is one other reason why I didn't want, even when I had the prompts tutorial, I didn't want to really talk about anything that's prompt specific, because you can't use everything the same way. Because before, I know I talked about like weights or something, right? Let's see, wearing a birthday hat on a window seal, right? Let's say I pushed up the weight of, what do I want to push up the weight of? The parrot, I don't know. And I don't, it's probably not enough information. How about this? Yeah. In a bedroom. Because we need enough information where it's gonna, where you could think that it would make a difference. Okay. So we're gonna put them in a bedroom and see if we can push up the weight of the parrot and see if the parrot just starts to dominate the freaking thing. Or anything. We could push up the weight of the window seal or something, right? So if we push up the weight of the bird to 1.5, which is pretty significant, what you're really gonna find out is that it doesn't even know what that means. Like this kind of syntax doesn't really work for Flux. So trying to make, you know, more emphasis on one thing based upon that, or whatever, you could just say, even maybe I wanted to talk more about the bedroom than talk about the parrot, right? You're gonna find that this is not really effective at doing anything because it's not really utilized in Flux. And this is another reason why I say I don't like to necessarily solve anything with prompts. But the power of Flux is mostly that it has a very strong or significant prompt adherence. So for the most part, it will listen to you if you just explain yourself. So why do we want to have weight on the freaking, let's see, all right, for instance, we want to have weight on the bed first, right? Or not the bed, I'm sorry, on the parrot first, right? So just say a big, oversized is wearing a birthday hat on a windowsill in a bedroom. The more descriptive you are, because it uses these large language models, like, right, or a large language model, which is the second one, it will more likely understand what you're talking about. Now the parrot did get bigger, but let's say we want it to be like, you know, a giant oversized parrot wearing a birthday hat. And if it's not, if we take off on the window seal, we could say, because if it was oversized, if it's giant, maybe say near the window seal, so it would make more sense in a bedroom. This is the important part. And see now, boom. Now it's this huge parrot in the bedroom versus pushing up weight and stuff like that. So there's an upside to Flux in the sense that you don't have to think about these little ways of trying to trick it all the time. Although sometimes you might need to. For instance, it's not necessarily near the window sill. Maybe you could run it again. You could try that. We'll just run it again. See if just running a new iteration of it will change it. Maybe it'll be more close to it. But we could also say is standing against a window seal. Oops. Against a window seal, wearing a birthday hat in a bedroom. A giant oversized parrot is standing against the window sill. Okay, so again, the last one, even running again, is still just stayed on the bed, right? We still got the oversized parrot, and he's still wearing the birthday hat. But we want him closer to the window. So making a description that does that helps us get it there. But what might help instead of saying bedroom, we could say adjacent to a bed. Or probably not. Maybe I could go back to near on this one. Actually, it might be better. Near the windowsill. Near the windowsill, wearing a birthday hat adjacent to a bed. Still on that bed, on that one. So, getting it off the bed is what we're trying to do now. So this is where, we can try to just say no bedroom. We could just say a room, and then describe it that way. So we're getting closer to the window with this, right? Room near the windowsill. Now I want you to really think about the fact that how you interpret, like what you talk about the most is what's gonna think is the most important, more than anything else. If I talk more about the bedroom, right? Let's do this. An oversized parrot is standing in the room near the windowsill, wearing a birthday hat adjacent to a bed. Let's say this. Wearing a birthday hat. Inside the room are kids celebrating a birthday party while playing a game. Is that I don't know why is it getting, looks like it's getting cut off for some reason. Yeah, I don't know, it's my screen. Board game at a wooden table with small chairs. Okay. The thing that you have to really see about Flux is that the more you describe something, that's the thing that's going to put the most emphasis on. If you choose not to describe something that much, that's what it's not going to talk about. So we talked about the oversized parrot and gave a pretty good description of everything. Like, windowsill, birthday hat, blah, 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 bed. And then there's the kids playing the board game. So the bed is less important and you don't see it as much anymore. Believe it might be here. Maybe it's this thing right here. But it's just that one thing, adjacent to a bed. You can run it again and you'll see maybe it'll show up a little bit more. But the most important things are the things you talked about the most. So whenever you're trying to build emphasis on something, right? Talk about it more. And the thing you don't want to be emphasized, don't talk about it that much. I see the bed's there, the kid's there, and the more stuff you keep putting into it, right? On the window sill, there are many glass jars of, I don't know, what would you put in a glass jar? Just for the herbs and spices. But one of the glass jars has a collection of multi-colored marbles. There is a stack of board game boxes on the floor, as well as toy cars and action figures. Okay, so now that was pretty descriptive about these other things that are around. I bet you the emphasis on the bird is going to start to shrink now because we're talking about so many other things. Yes, the bird is still giant, right? But he's not as big. And there's so many other things in the image now. And we got, I guess those are marbles. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I might need to increase the size of the image to get it to do more than that. But the bed's still there. Bird's still kind of there. He's still the window adjacent, blah, 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 right? But he's not as like overbearing as he was in the last image that we had on there. So you can just keep running this, and we can start talking about other things. And this is a great way, I think, to build in Flux. Go bit by bit. Don't try to come up with the overarching, like, longest prompt you've ever come up with, blah, blah, blah. Go bit by bit. Talk about the things you want to talk about, and then keep moving forward with the prompt. And also this, keep in mind that thing about the first thing you talk about still plays an important role. So let's do this. Take this right here, cut it out. Inside, I'll say a room. A giant oversized parrot is standing in the room near the windowsill, wearing a birthday, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's just throw it in the middle. The very first thing you talk about is almost always prioritized, and I don't think that matters which models or whether you're using stable diffusion or anything else. It doesn't really matter what you're using. That's going to be the priority. So now you can see the room, even like the way it's set up, it's more like develops and like the whole picture itself. Like now we're actually talking about the setting of the room, not just the bird so much. He's just there. Now he seems even more a part of it. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's not the first thing you're talking about. It's not the only thing you're talking about. And again, the bird has kind of shrunken a little bit. It's still a giant because you said it's a giant bird, right? But the idea is that it's not as important as making sure the other things are developed. So I'm just using regular everyday speech. I'm not doing anything like incredibly crazy. It's just what you talk about the most, where you emphasize, where you put it is really the only thing that's going to dictate how it's going to come out. And make sure that if you don't want something in there, you don't say it. Make sure that like something might pop up, but you don't say it. Now, another thing you might notice too is like this thing where sometimes you get stuff like this where it's like it seems less and less realistic. Like, how do I know what I'm gonna get? You can try to mess with the guidance part, right? The guidance really only works from about 1 to 3.5, or you can go lower than that, but then it's gonna start to look like really like cloudy, and like if you put it on like 0.5 or something like that, it's like it's barely gonna show up. It would be as if you barely did any steps on it, I guess you could say. As you lower this number, like around like again somewhere 2.8 or something like that, it kind of gets a little bit more realistic. Again, I don't have the definition up that high, and as you go higher, it has a tendency to get a little bit more cartoony. But again, if you go as low as like 1 or something like that, you're not going to get really anything that refined. Just keep that in mind too. You can't go too low with it, but it really doesn't do much after 3.5. Now again, you can see like more the other things we talk about, the more this parrot isn't that big anymore. And this doesn't affect, the guidance doesn't affect really how fast or slow anything you get out of it happens. But that's probably the easiest way. As you can see at 1.5, it's not refined. It's like not even really developed yet. If you're looking for something like that, you want underdeveloped, then you go that low. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't go below, not that low. I probably wouldn't go below 2.5. You might be able to go to 2. I don't think I've ever really done guidance at 2 that I can remember. But 2.5 and up, 2.5 to maybe like 2.8. That's 2.5. You can try 2.0, which I'm guessing is going to be even less refined. Normally, I don't do the images on Flux at this low of resolution, but I'm just trying to make this thing move quicker. The bird has feet. Yeah, this is at 2.0. So it's not really cartoony, but it's not necessarily realistic because of the low definition. But I guess if it was higher definition, it would be. Which, you could also upscale this. You could take something like this, maybe you like the way this looks, just upscale it with something else, or upscale it through this. As I believe I have a tutorial up that talked about this. If I don't, I'm gonna put it up. But where you just take what you already have here and then upscale something, utilizing what you have already, rather than going through a whole nother workflow and then dumping into that. You can just move from here. That's why I like to show you how to create workflows rather than just like give you a downloadable workflow or something for you to do. It's way more powerful to just know how to do it yourself. So for the most part, this is Flux. That's all right. Let's go back up to let's at least go to 3.0. Something I do almost all the time is copy and paste this here. The same exact thing. It's basically this is basically the large language model thing. This is the clip adherence thing to, you know, the model itself. Usually I get more refined results when I do both together. Usually. But sometimes you get crap like this where 2 parrots pop up. I don't even know how that works. But sometimes that works if you want to do it that way. But if you just put it here, I don't think it's effective at all. And just for the sake of argument, I just want to show that. Before I do one last thing. Yeah, see, that one looks a lot better. And again, if you upscale this, if you were going for like something a little bit more realistic, as much as, you know, I don't know how realistic a 6-foot parrot is, but yeah, you could just upscale this and look better. I don't know why I put the jars. I guess I didn't say at the bottom of the windowsill. I guess at the top is still a part of it. So yeah, if you put it only in the clip L section right here, it doesn't really adhere to what you're talking about. So you need to be able to talk to it like, you know, regular speech. You need to use the large language model T5XXL part. Otherwise, it's just, you're gonna get something that's like, is that anything like I just said? Probably not. And I don't even know if that had any influence at all. That's the strange thing about that section. But there's one other thing that I like to do that's really cool about this. So Flux has the ability to type text pretty well, but you have to do it in a way that's not overbearing. Like, be very direct with it. Like, so there is a banner with that says, yeah, that says happy birthday. Oh my god, I am like so dyslexic or something. My fingers are so messed up. The banner near the window that says happy birthday. Okay. To be able to like do this, you're probably gonna need Flux. I believe you have some language models now that they can, or some type of encoders that they have now. See, and it does it pretty freaking well. First try, happy birthday, right? There are some ones in Stable Diffusion XL that can do this now, and I believe definitely in Stable Diffusion 3, but I feel like Stable Diffusion 3 a lot of times is really bulky. But I still feel like Flux is very good at this and has a level of superiority when it comes to like putting in text. So, and you can be very descriptive about the type of text too. I've even had things where I've added like certain fonts to it to make it like specific styles. But yeah, that's Flux in a nutshell. That's how you can use it. And again, all the same things like adding in LoRa's is the same way as the previous tutorial. So if you don't know how to add LoRa's into it, check out my tutorial about adding LoRa's. And you can do upscaling the same type of way with this thing, where you're adding in, you know, from the latent, you can come here and do the latent upscale by type thing. All that's still available the same kind of way. Nothing, there's no difference in that. I hope this was informative, and you know, let me know what you guys want to know more about, because that's really what's gonna make my tutorials more informative, because I don't know exactly what everybody wants to see. I just know what seems to be common. But yeah, have a nice day, and yeah, have a nice day.